Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is focused on Table Mountain. More specifically, why we need to stop further development on it. I'm really excited to get into this because the stuff you sent me is fascinating.
Yeah, there's so much going on over there. It really does seem like we're at a crucial point with Table Mountain. And figuring out what to do next is going to be really difficult. I mean, just starting with the number of threatened species is overwhelming.
Right. I mean, just reading about how many plants and animals are in danger there is alarming.
Like, the city of Cape Town has their biodiversity management branch, and they say that Table Mountain has the highest concentration of threatened species for its size
Yeah.
of anywhere on any continent.
Wow. I was reading that one report that compared Table Mountain to the Amazon rainforest in terms of the number of plants. And get this, Table Mountain has even more per square kilometer.
That's wild. And what's crazy is we're still finding new species there.
Like that butterfly? What was it called?
The Swartland silver-spotted copper. It was thought to be extinct, but someone found a population in the Dawsonburg Hills.
It's kind of like we're destroying a library without even reading all the books.
That's a great way to put it.
And then on top of all that, you mentioned these biodiversity offsets.
Yeah.
What are those?
So it's a pretty complex thing, but essentially it lets developers damage one habitat if they agree to protect a similar one somewhere else to try and offset the damage they're causing. But the problem is you can't really truly replace a habitat. Like, once it's gone, it's gone.
I see. So it's like a compromise, but not a perfect one.
Right. And the city is trying to manage it all through something called conservation land banks. But it's really tricky to make sure it's all balanced and fair.
So we've got this incredibly biodiverse environment that's under constant threat from development. But then in your notes, you brought up something else, vineyards. How are they a threat to Table Mountain?
Well, so vineyards need a lot of water to thrive, especially on the slopes of Table Mountain. And that puts a lot of stress on the water resources, which are already limited.
Oh, right. Cape Town has had all those water scarcity issues, like day zero a few years back.
Exactly. And vineyards could make that worse, not just for the vineyards, but the whole ecosystem.
It's like taking a really long bath when your neighbors don't have any water. So when you think about iconic protected areas, you usually think about national parks. But it seems like with Table Mountain, it's more complicated.
It's true. Parts of it are privately owned or managed by the city, and that makes conservation efforts a lot harder because it needs to be coordinated across all these different groups. Even within the national park itself, getting the funding and resources they need is a constant struggle.
So we're talking about a lot of competing interests: developers,
Yeah.
agriculture, conservation, and then just the basic needs of the people who live there. Finding a balance must be so challenging.
I think the key is finding solutions that respect Table Mountain for everything it is. It's not just about the plants and animals. It's a cultural touchstone, a symbol of Cape Town. And for tourists, it's a major draw. So if we let development go unchecked, we don't just lose the landscape, we lose what makes this place unique.
Yeah, it's like chipping away at a masterpiece. And one of the reports said that every meter of Table Mountain that's lost to development is a loss for humanity. It's not just a local issue. It has global implications.
Absolutely. It's not about saying no to all progress. It's about being smart about it, finding ways to develop sustainably. So we need to ask ourselves some hard questions, like, can we find that balance? Can we make sure that future generations get to experience Table Mountain, all its beauty and wonder?
That's a lot to think about.
It's interesting when you think about how Table Mountain is constantly changing, like natural events, fires, they've always shaped the landscape. But now we've got human activity speeding things up even more.
Right, because things like development and resource extraction really throw off the balance.
Yeah, they push the ecosystem too far. It's all about respecting the mountain's carrying capacity. Like, how much life can it support before it starts to get damaged? And a big part of that is water.
Which brings us back to those vineyards.
Exactly. They're kind of a symptom of a bigger problem, water scarcity. And that's a major threat to Table Mountain's future.
One of the papers you sent me talked about the irreplaceable freshwater arthropod diversity in mountains. And I have to admit, I never really thought about mountains as sources of fresh water.
Yeah, it's a connection that people don't always make. But mountains are like natural water towers, storing rainwater and snowmelt, which then feeds into the rivers and streams, supporting all the life downstream. So if we mess with those mountain ecosystems, we're going to see the consequences way beyond the mountains themselves.
So it's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
One change leads to another, and things get out of control.
Right. And we can't forget about the people who depend on Table Mountain for tourism. for recreation, for their jobs.
That's true. We haven't even touched on the economic side of things.
It's all connected. The health of the environment is directly tied to the well-being of the people. Table Mountain drives a huge tourism industry. It provides all kinds of recreational opportunities. It even helps regulate the local climate. So when we damage the mountain, we're not just hurting the environment, we're hurting the community that relies on it.
So let's talk specifics. How is development impacting Table Mountain? What are the main concerns?
Well, one big one is habitat fragmentation. As we build things like roads and houses, we're cutting up the landscape, and that isolates populations of plants and animals.
So they can't move around as easily.
Right, and that makes it harder for them to reproduce, which
Yeah.
makes them more vulnerable to extinction, especially with climate change adding even more pressure.
It's like we're building walls within a city,
Yeah.
making it hard to get around, isolating communities.
Exactly. And it's not just fragmentation. We're also talking about the complete destruction of habitats. When we clear land for development, those ecosystems are gone. And often the ones we're destroying are the most valuable for biodiversity. That's why these initiatives like BioNet are so important. They help us figure out which areas are crucial and steer development away from them.
But like we talked about earlier, it's not a perfect system.
No, it's not. There's always pressure to develop, especially when there's money to be made. It's tough. Trying to balance those short-term gains with long-term sustainability. It's facing some serious challenges, for sure. But by understanding those challenges and learning from what's happened in the past, we can create a future where both people and nature can thrive. It's not about giving up. It's about getting involved, raising awareness, making smart choices. That's the whole point of this deep dive, right? Giving people the information they need to be part of the solution.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here. The science, the threats, the potential solutions. But it seems like the common thread running through all of this is the human element. It's people who are making the decisions that are impacting Table Mountain.
It's true. At the end of the day, conservation is about people, their values, their actions, how well they understand how everything is connected.
One of the research papers you sent me emphasized the importance of indigenous knowledge.
Oh yeah, incorporating that is crucial.
Like the Khoisan people. They've lived in the Cape region for centuries. They have such a deep understanding of Table Mountain.
And for too long, we've ignored that. Conservation has been so focused on Western science that we've overlooked the incredible knowledge that indigenous communities have.
So we need to bring those perspectives together.
Right. Because it can really enhance our understanding of these complex systems, and it makes conservation more inclusive and equitable too.
So it's not just about scientists or indigenous communities. It's about everyone.
Exactly. Everyone who lives in Cape Town, everyone who visits, anyone who cares about Table Mountain, we all have a role to play. We can advocate for its protection. We can make sustainable choices in our own lives. We can support organizations that are doing the work on the ground.
There's definitely a sense of urgency in all these reports. It's like they're calling on everyone to step up and become stewards of this incredible place.
And they're right. Every decision we make has an impact, from what we buy to how we vote. And when it comes to Table Mountain, we have a responsibility to make sure it's still here for future generations.
Well, I know I'm leaving this deep dive feeling a lot more aware of the challenges Table Mountain is facing, but also more inspired to do something about it.
That's great to hear. Remember, even small actions can make a difference. Support local conservation organizations. Learn more about Table Mountain. Talk to your friends and family. And make choices that minimize your impact on the environment.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the science, the threats, the potential solutions. But ultimately, Table Mountain is more than just a pretty mountain. It's a vital ecosystem, a cultural landmark, a symbol of the delicate balance between humans and nature.
And protecting it is going to take all of us working together. It's about committing to sustainability and being open to different perspectives. So the next time you look up at Table Mountain, really take a moment to appreciate it, its beauty, its resilience, and the responsibility we all share in protecting it.